There are seasons in a woman's life that feel unbearably heavy, when prayers seem unanswered, strength feels drained, and hope feels distant. In those moments, many women assume they have been abandoned, forgotten, or punished. But often, what feels like breaking is actually preparation. God never wastes pain. When He intends to use a woman greatly, He first works deeply. This message is for every woman who has questioned why her journey has been so hard while others seem to walk with ease. God does not break a woman to destroy her. He breaks her to develop her. Breaking is not rejection. It is selection. When God places His hand upon a woman's destiny, He begins by removing what cannot travel with her purpose. Pride must fall. Fear must be confronted. Dependency on people must be stripped away so dependency on God can be established. A woman who has never been broken cannot be trusted with influence, because unbroken vessels leak character. God breaks the woman He wants to use because purpose requires discipline, and discipline requires pressure. The breaking season teaches her obedience when no one is watching. It teaches her humility when applause is absent. It teaches her faith when evidence is missing. God allows her plans to collapse so His purpose can stand. Brokenness sharpens her discernment. Pain becomes her instructor. Loss becomes her language. Tears become her training ground. She learns to hear God's voice clearly because distractions have been silenced. God breaks her so she no longer seeks validation from people who cannot carry her destiny. He breaks her so she stops confusing affection with assignment. He breaks her so she understands that calling is not about comfort, but about contribution. When the breaking is complete, the woman rises with clarity, authority, and compassion. She does not compete, she completes. She does not beg for space, she commands it. Her strength is no longer loud, it is rooted. God never breaks a woman without intention. He breaks her because He trusts her with impact. Breaking is not punishment. It is preparation for purpose. When God allows a woman to experience seasons of pressure, loss, or delay, it is not because she has failed, but because she has been chosen for something that requires depth, maturity, and strength beyond the ordinary. Punishment seeks to correct wrongdoing, but preparation seeks to build capacity. What feels like breaking is often God increasing the woman's ability to carry responsibility, influence, and impact without collapsing under the weight of it. Breaking exposes what is fragile within her: attitudes, motives, dependencies, and expectations that cannot sustain purpose. God does not strip her to leave her empty. He strips her to remove what would contaminate her calling. Comfort is reduced so character can be refined. Familiar support systems are shaken so inner stability can be developed. The breaking reveals not her weakness, but the areas where growth must occur before promotion can be trusted. Preparation through breaking also reshapes her understanding of strength. She learns that strength is not loud confidence or self-sufficiency, but the ability to remain faithful when outcomes are uncertain. She discovers endurance, patience, and discernment in environments where shortcuts would be easier. The process teaches her to listen more deeply, to respond rather than react, and to depend on divine direction rather than emotional impulse. In the breaking, her identity is clarified. She is no longer defined by approval, performance, or comparison. The removal of external validation forces her to confront who she is when applause disappears and expectations are unmet. This internal realignment is essential because purpose demands identity stability. A woman who does not know who she is will misuse what she is given. Breaking also prepares her emotionally. It enlarges her capacity for empathy, compassion, and understanding. Pain becomes a teacher, enabling her to connect with others without judgment. The wounds she survives become points of wisdom, allowing her to serve from experience rather than theory. This depth cannot be learned in comfort. It is cultivated in adversity. Preparation through breaking establishes discipline. It trains her to steward time, decisions, and relationships with intention. She learns restraint, wisdom, and accountability. Purpose requires order, and breaking dismantles chaos so structure can be built. God allows pressure so focus is sharpened and distractions are eliminated. Breaking is evidence that purpose is near, because only valuable vessels undergo refinement. God prepares before he positions, develops before he deploys, and shapes before he sends. The breaking is not a sign that something is wrong with her, but that something significant is being formed within her. God removes what you depend on, so you can discover who you are. Dependency has a way of hiding identity, because when a woman leans too heavily on people, positions, resources, or routines, she never fully explores her own capacity. God allows those supports to be shaken or removed, not to leave her helpless, but to reveal what has always been inside her. What she thought she could not survive without becomes the very thing God uses to introduce her to her true strength. When familiar support disappears, identity is exposed. She begins to confront the difference between who she is and what she relied on. Titles fade, relationships change, and comfort zones collapse, forcing her to ask deeper questions about her purpose and value. In that space of uncertainty, God redirects her focus inward, where gifts, convictions, and calling have been waiting to be acknowledged. The removal of dependency also corrects misplaced trust. Anything dependent on more than God eventually becomes a limitation. When God removes it, he is not being harsh, he is being precise. He understands that purpose cannot be built on unstable foundations. By taking away what she leaned on, he teaches her to stand, think, and decide with clarity and confidence rooted in truth rather than convenience. Through this process, she learns self-awareness. She recognizes her resilience, creativity, and wisdom. She discovers that her voice has weight, her presence has influence, and her decisions matter. The absence of external support trains her to listen more carefully to inner conviction and divine direction. What once felt like abandonment becomes an invitation to maturity. As dependency fades, identity strengthens. She no longer borrows confidence from people or circumstances. She becomes grounded not because everything around her is secure, but because she knows who she is. The removal was never about loss. It was about revelation. Your pain is not evidence of God's absence, but proof of his investment. Pain often arrives when growth is required, not when abandonment has occurred. When God is absent, there is neglect. When God is present, there is intentional work. Pain signals that something valuable is being shaped, adjusted, or strengthened. No one invests in what they intend to discard. The presence of pain indicates that God considers the woman worth the process. Pain reveals the seriousness of God's purpose. Purpose is not entrusted casually, and preparation is never gentle when the assignment is significant. God allows discomfort because comfort would leave her unprepared. The pressure she feels is not random, it is measured. Every challenge exposes an area where strength, wisdom, or endurance must increase before the next level of responsibility is released. When pain is present, God is often closest, though least felt. Silence does not mean absence, it often means concentration. Like a craftsman working with precision, God focuses intensely on the areas that require refinement. The woman may feel isolated, but she is not ignored. She is being shaped with care, intention, and foresight. Pain also sharpens perception. It strips away illusions and forces honesty. In pain, she learns what truly matters, who can be trusted, and what must be released. This clarity is part of the investment. God uses pain to develop discernment, depth, and resilience, qualities that cannot be formed in ease. Investment always involves cost. God invests time, attention, and process into those he intends to use effectively. Pain is not the end of the story. It is evidence that transformation is underway. The discomfort she experiences is not a sign of divine distance, but a mark of divine involvement, purposefully shaping her for what lies ahead. Character is formed under pressure, not convenience. Convenience reveals preferences, but pressure reveals principles. When life is easy, values are rarely tested, and intentions remain unproven. It is under pressure that a woman discovers what truly governs her decisions, her reactions, and her integrity. Pressure removes the option of pretending and forces alignment between belief and behavior. Under pressure, character is either established or exposed. The demands, delays, and disappointments of life press against the inner core, revealing whether strength is rooted in conviction or circumstance. Convenience allows compromise to hide, but pressure brings clarity. It confronts excuses and demands responsibility, shaping consistency where comfort would allow inconsistency. Pressure also develops discipline. When resources are limited and outcomes uncertain, choices must be intentional. A woman learns to govern her emotions, manage her words, and control her responses. This restraint becomes the foundation of character. Without pressure, discipline remains theoretical. Under pressure, it becomes practice. In moments of pressure, motivation shifts from external reward to internal commitment. Applause fades, support may diminish, and progress feels slow, yet character continues to grow. The woman learns perseverance, patience, and endurance, not because circumstances are favorable, but because quitting is no longer an option. Pressure teaches her to stand firm when walking away would be easier. Character shaped under pressure becomes reliable. It does not depend on mood, recognition, or ease. It is stable, tested, and trustworthy. God allows pressure not to crush, but to solidify. What survives pressure emerges refined, strengthened, and prepared to carry responsibility without being corrupted by comfort. Purpose demands discipline, and discipline demands surrender. Purpose is not fulfilled by intention alone. It requires structure, consistency, and restraint. Without discipline, purpose remains an idea rather than a reality. Discipline establishes boundaries around time, habits, relationships, and decisions, so that purpose can be pursued with focus and integrity. It is the daily alignment of actions with calling, even when motivation is low or resistance is high. Discipline cannot exist without surrender, because true discipline requires yielding personal preferences to a higher commitment. A woman must surrender comfort, convenience, and control in order to develop the habits that sustain purpose. This surrender is not weakness, it is strategic submission. It is the decision to release immediate gratification in exchange for long-term fulfillment. Surrender reshapes priorities. It forces honest evaluation of what must be released, adjusted, or removed. Discipline demands saying no to distractions that compete with purpose and yes to responsibilities that refine character. Without surrender, discipline becomes inconsistent and selective, applied only when it feels convenient. Through surrender, discipline becomes sustainable. The woman no longer relies on emotion to govern her actions. She submits her will to direction, her impulses to wisdom, and her pace to timing. This internal order creates external progress. Discipline formed through surrender produces stability, endurance, and clarity. Purpose cannot be carried by a life governed by impulse. It requires submission to process and patience with growth. Discipline is the framework that protects purpose, and surrender is the doorway through which discipline is born.